afternoon. How's everybody doing? We are going to get started here. Chad's going to lead us through most of today. So again, I'm Erin Wells. I'm with the University of Texas. I'm going to be watching the chat for us today and throwing stuff out there. But Chad from Ohio State, I'm going to throw it over to him. He's going to be leading through us most of today.
Thanks, Erin. Just want to first start and say thanks for attending today. We have a few housekeeping items. The first thing is use the chat as needed to comment or ask questions. Erin or Sarah will be monitoring that to help out as needed. So the main thing too is we're trying to steer clear of state-specific topics such as masks, locker rooms. We want to try to focus more on things that'll be universal for all of our universities and all of our departments. So as we ask questions and kind of go through each topic, try to think of how what you're discussing could impact or assist another department with their reopening plans. So the first thing we want to just kind of talk again about life during COVID. The first thing is kind of the reoccupying committee and your progress. Just for example, I know Ohio State and our rec sports department, we have a return to work team that's made up of 6 different areas with a budget team, facilities, marketing communications, membership team, programming, and then just return for telework for our professional staff. We're using Microsoft Teams, and I think I talked about this at our last meeting as far as how we're setting that up. We've officially got a date as far as the university starting in the fall, but I was wondering if any other universities have started these committees and how they've structured it, if any best practices that they wanted to share with us. If I know you, I will call you out. Jillian.
I'm at Xavier University, and we do have a COVID-19 task force that's being head up by our Dean of Students and the VP for Student Affairs. Within that, there are subcommittees as well. So for example, our director is on the Facilities Operations Subcommittee. So the COVID task force meets daily, and the committees are meeting at least once a week. But those are looking at more of the general broad of the university policies and practices. We currently do not have, we're a pro staff of 6, and so we have been having our scenario planning. So I guess we're our own reopening committee of just our pro staff. Thanks for the call out, Chad.
Anytime.
This is Leslie Dulle. I'm Jillian's director. I'll chime in. They have student engagement is being looked at. Human resources is handling the employee return to work aspect of it. There's an academic subcommittee, so they're looking at everything. What the purpose of that COVID task force is for everyone to make their recommendations based on some scenarios that were given to each committee. If we're all remote, if we have a hybrid, if we do this. And then the only other decision that Xavier has made is that we are going to start a week early. So currently we are now scheduled to start on August the 17th in order to be finished the Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving, and our students will have until noon the next day on that Wednesday to be out of the halls. They'll do their finals remotely the week after.
Great. Stephanie, you talked about your task force. I think an important point of your message was looking specifically at each actual facility and going through those and touring those. We did those as well with our interior design staff, and they helped with some planning and provided some documents of actual being able to lay out each of the facilities, spacing. So if you have that opportunity to get back on campus, I would strongly suggest that. And if you have those actual building plans available, those can be very helpful too.
Chad, I'll share. So A&M Commerce, what we did, we do have the university committees that's kind of already been talked about, but from a rec center standpoint, we split it up into 3 separate committees. So we had the operations and the facility committee, which is the one that I'm currently leading. And then we had a risk management and safety one, which is talking about what are we going to do with our certifications? Are we going to change that? How's it going to affect our EAP when we reopen? And then we have a programs committee that's focusing on how are we still going to engage our students with them being online over the summer, and then potentially what are their options on a programming for fall, especially if we're still in this similar situation. From the facility operations side, there's about 4 of us on the committee. We split up our pro staff, and we just broke it down based on like access and memberships and how far are we going to space equipment, what spaces we're going to close down, what space are we going to modify the use for. We did about 2 weeks worth, and we've got it finally typed up, and we're about to send it over to our EOC to get approved. And then on the risk management one, we've decided to, our building supervisors, we decided to change their certification to professional rescuer. So their giving care is going to be elevated because of all of the COVID. So now as part of our reopening all next week and the weekend of next, we're going to be getting them trained and retrained in a different certification so that they are prepared to give care when we open back up.
Great. So I know one thing that we are, I wouldn't say struggling, but that's come up is just staffing and how that will work out. Erin talked about what UT is doing. They're having essentially a split group of orange and white days where they're having a different set for pro staff coming in on one day, and then this other group, the white group, will be in on the other days. Has anyone else talked about how your staffing model is going to be created, and then also the training aspects that go along with that?
I can talk to that a little bit about what we're doing. So the main reason we're splitting our staff is so that if somebody does test positive or has to quarantine, we don't lose the entire staff. So that's why we're splitting it up. And I wrote this in the comments, we're actually even gonna try to do it with our students, understanding that they're probably going to hang out outside of work together anyway, but we're going to try to do work teams like that so that if something were to happen, we don't lose the entire staff at once. Is that something other people are thinking about? I know I think I heard yesterday in the aquatics one, there was one place was doing teams of 3 different teams. Is anybody else thinking about that and how they're going to be doing that?
Cincinnati, our pros are going to split into 2 different teams, but with as many students as we have, I haven't quite figured out how that's going to work for them, if we're going to be able to do that, and then if they would only be able to sub from within their own group or something like that. We also don't know like if we're going to have reduced hours or not and how that's going to impact things. So, I was actually on a call with our VP over campus services earlier, and he was talking about like reduced hours specifically in the pool because of a lot of our costs being associated with staffing and maybe not as many people using that space as could be using other parts of the building. So if we can split up into a pod like that with students, that'd be great, but also basing their schedules on their availability might make that even more difficult, and that's what we would normally do. So I still have yet to figure that out. But our pros we're planning to go either 2 or 3 days a week in the office and then the other days at home, and then rotate that.
Hey, Jason, Darby, can you talk a little bit about like why y'all decided not to do that? Not to split staff?
Sure. That actually came from our director. Originally, the plan was, and him and I worked on a couple different layouts of what that would look like if we were to split the professional staff. And then obviously we did have the discussion about, does that carry down into student staff, because if the whole premise is to limit, who would be affected by the outbreak, then we have to take that into consideration. Part of the reason why we aren't moving forward with that kind of came at the directive of our director of health services on campus. She kind of stressed that she didn't feel that was a step we needed to take due to some of the other precautions that we are taking with our distancing in the facility and other steps that we've taken to limit contact and interaction. She just kind of advised that wasn't, something necessary in her opinion. And the other reason was that we are limited on our student staff that's going to be here coming back. So once we looked at the expanded picture of that, it just wasn't very realistic that we could run our even our adjusted model with that while, splitting the staff that way. We went back and forth on it, but we have taken other precautions in our facility and done some things where we think that, we can move forward with that. We are going to be requiring our staff to wear masks for the time being, and moving forward with that. And even in our professional staff meetings, we're going to still be doing them via Zoom, even if we're sitting in our own offices and everything. We're going to do everything we can to keep that space intact.
Thanks, Jason. Erin, you had talked about kind of our next point, actually. We're talking about training for students and professional staff of some of the models of, or we have virtual training, cross training, especially due to limited, potentially like budget cuts and needing more staffing for different facilities. Does anyone have some ideas or different topics they've discussed regarding training for both your pro staff and students, and then also leading into potentially longer fall semester breaks? How are we going to actually cover potentially 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 2.5 months for winter break? Has that been discussed with any of your groups, and maybe how you're going to handle that?
I missed the first part of that. Can you repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, sorry. I have a really terrible mic set. So Erin from Akron brought up a point of where staff is going to be probably requested due to budget cuts to help out in different areas. So how are you guys potentially handling the cross training of just not only your student staff, but your professional staff as well? And also potentially a much longer break for winter, where a lot of them are doing away with fall break, and you could potentially not be starting until February now for some schools, and having that 2-month break. How are you going to staff that? Have anybody devised a plan for that? Has it been discussed in your groups?
Hey, Chad, this is Erin from the University of Akron. So one of the things that we're actually currently trying to talk through, we are actually in the process of cross-training our professional staff with our student staff positions. We were just recently informed that we have a 20+% cut that we have to go through. We've lost 2 professional positions already. We don't know what else. So our current pro staff are actually going through it and learning all of the different pro student positions that we have, front desk policies, fitness floor policies, different things from our students' perspective. So that way, me as an intramural sports manager, I can perform the duties and functions of our fitness floor attendant or our front desk staff employee. Unfortunately, we are going to also have to lose a bunch of student staff positions to those cuts. So trying to mesh our front desk staff with our fitness floor training, so that way that those are blended for them. We're actually already moving those to an online format for anyone that we hire new. As far as the break goes, we're fortunate that we're such a commuter campus that a lot of our employees live close. So most of them who go home aren't really going home. They're just going 20 minutes away. So that's at least where we're at. And, it's weird to, as a professional staff, be going through fitness floor attendant training, but it's an eye-opening experience, to say the least.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else have come up with that?
Can I ask Jason a question? So, Jason, I'm looking at what you just wrote, and you talked about opening an F45 studio. Are you still doing that this semester?
That is a fun topic. It was actually supposed to be opened early this spring. We were actually thinking that by January, February, it would be open. There was, I will put it lightly, just a mix-up with the equipment getting to us at that point. And then due to COVID, the equipment we were supposed to get at that point then was not able to be shipped at the time due to everything going on. That was actually a blessing in disguise, because I can't imagine the nightmare that would have been refunds for memberships and everything over the last few months. So I could not be more happy that mix-up happened. But we have been told that here in 6 to 10 weeks, we should be getting the build out in for our facility and getting that going. So the game plan for us at the moment is still to proceed with that. But that would then affect, when we get to now what will be an even longer Christmas break, the hours that we would have to operate under, even if it was opening up limited, to have those classes happen, because we are going to sell those memberships separate from our actual facility memberships. So, not to take away from those members who pay for that. So we would still want to have hours in some regard, but we haven't been given instruction from our division on what the expectation will be for that once we get past Thanksgiving break.
Okay. I was just wondering, because it's a very unique one in how they share equipment and things. So it's just that was interesting.
Yeah, and they've given some recommendations on some adaptations you can make with it. And so we're kind of, like I said, we're at least moving forward with the build out at this point. And like I said, once we get a little bit more instruction on what the expectation is for our campus, and we'll know how we're moving forward with it a little bit better.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, that was my little side.
Jillian had a good question about changing membership types. Has that come up with other areas as far as not allowing external members? I think initially for our opening, we were hoping it will be only current members. I don't know how we will handle external members going forward. W&M is considering suspended community membership sales.
Hi, this is Leslie again. I think Jillian and I both just asked the same question. So I met with our senior leadership team this morning, and if you look at the CDC guidelines, especially around higher education, they're talking about non-essential visitors. And while we have alumni and community that had already purchased memberships with us, I still kind of view them as non-essential to being on campus. If we're talking about trying to protect our students and trying to protect our employees, my recommendation is going to be that we refund them, and we just explain to them, this is just during this period, this is not forever, but you have an option. We'll totally extend, whether you're gone from us from a year or whatever, we'll extend, or we'll figure out if the university will approve refunds, because to me, it's so contradictory. We're talking about all these things we're not going to allow the students to do, but yet we're going to allow a community member to come in, So I just was curious if anyone else was considering kind of terminating their existing non-student and employee members.
I'd say for OSU long-term, that would not be the plan. Just from a financial standpoint, I would think we would need to have non-student memberships just to be sustainable.
I agree with Chad. At first, for phase 1, UT Austin will not be doing guest passes or new memberships. We're going to be sticking with current members and kind of build from there. But I'm with Chad. I don't think that's long term.
So next, I wanted to touch base on your supply chains, probably specifically with PPE and other purchasing. I would imagine most universities are on a purchasing freeze, but if you have already started that process of reopening and making purchases, can anyone touch on how that's been, if it's been done internally as a department or larger scale with student life, the university, and maybe how long it's taken to have a purchase and completed and actually receive the items, even specifically with PPE, if that's come up yet? Is
Go
anyone,
Ross.
is
Go
anyone
Ross.
open that would like to touch on that?
Yeah, so this is Ross Rodriguez with the University of Texas at Austin, and I've been working closely with another one of our teammates trying to secure various different forms of PPE. We started back in March trying to source certain things, specifically hand sanitizer and dispensers, the Clorox 360 machines that seem to be in hot demand, handheld electrostatic sprayers. And so as our needs evolved over the last couple of months, we've been sourcing different things. We have entered into a campus-wide agreement with U.S. Foods because they're able to provide high volume of latex and nitrile gloves at a very low price point per box. And you can get a pretty good amount of them relatively cheaply. So we've partnered with Housing and Dining and the university unions on things like disposable masks, disposable gloves, hand sanitizer, sourcing them all from the same kind of locations. We're also building personal protective barriers, sneeze guards, if you will, at a buffet. And so we're all working together to source those and get them at more competitive pricing than just buying a couple thousand gloves on our own and getting price gouged right now, even though businesses shouldn't be price gouging. If you look at the price of hand sanitizer from March compared to that exact same item now, if you're able to find it, it's a couple dollars more expensive per unit.
Hey Ross, will you talk to like our goals for opening and kind of some of that stuff?
Yeah, so as Erin alluded to earlier, we're opening in a phased approach, and of the 8 facilities that we have, we're opening with 1.5 during phase 1. And our goal for all of our PPE is to keep at least a 30 to 45 day supply of everything. So that our main items are obviously gloves, disinfectant, solution, both wipes and spray bottles, and masks and hand sanitizer. So if we can keep a 30 to 45 day supply of all of that. And then as we start to look to open additional facilities, that's part of the criterion for us as we move towards phase 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3, is not only do we have the staff to open those, is there a need for us to open them, but do we have the ability to source that 30 to 45 day supply of PPE as we continue expanding outward and adding more staff on shift per day, which increases our needs per day of each of those items.
Bob, has that purchase actually gone through yet for your PPE?
Yeah, we've been collecting items throughout the course of the closure. We're not on a spending freeze per se. We are on a hiring freeze, but if it's COVID-19 related, we've found no issues with securing the items that we need. And we've spent a pretty good chunk of change since March trying to make sure that we have our supplies on hand.
Jillian.
Bob, how's that purchasing process going? Has it been easy, hard?
The filling out the list, kind of identifying what we want has been the easiest part. And then submitting it wasn't too bad. We got pretty good response back to say, hey, we've got plenty of this, we got plenty of that, we can get it to you. The hard part is the sprayer, like was mentioned earlier. They're back ordered. What we heard was October was when a new one might be delivered. So they're trying to source it from some different vendors. We hope to be open by October. We hope to be open in August, but we do have a little bit of time, so we're not freaking out. There's enough to freak out about without adding that to the list.
Thank you. Mark, you had a really good question. I'm going to read this. Outside of the physical safety measures, what are some institutions doing to facilitate the participant experience, and specifically as it relates to the role of staff, creating a sense of belonging during these crazy times, rather than it coming at a point of enforcement, potentially conflict of all risk management protocols being put in place. Has that been discussed in any of your universities? That as we've obviously always had some guidelines that we've had to enforce, but have any of you talked about how that's going to change with even more guidelines to actually enforce?
Mark, are you talking like communicating with patrons before reopen and what to expect, and maybe having signage up throughout the facility? We're talking about floor clings to route traffic, and some maybe mirror clings to help with what is expected in new expectations for the weight room. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, and I think a little bit of is, the training involved. To take it to a very simple explanation is, we know the impact of, say, someone who doesn't come to the customer service desk with a membership or their student card. And that interaction can be very important to that person's sense of belonging. If we go, sorry, no membership, you're gone. We already know those happen on a very basic level. Now at this, this pandemic and all these added features, how do we understand that the risk management is important, but we're not only communicating it, but just trying to de-escalate and provide opportunities for staff to not worry about, again, that engagement or enforcement, but developing that sense of belonging for, especially it could be a first year student going, I've never been in this facility before, and I'm getting a heat check and temperature gauge. So really focusing on are there institutions that have an intentional approach to that, so that the language in the posters or whatever are saying things that kind of create that sense of, hey, we're here for your safety. We want you to have a good experience. Unfortunately, this is what's happening, but let's do this together rather than, stand 6 feet apart, do this, don't touch that, and kind of what that looks like.
I can tell you that, unfortunately, I'm facilities, so I'm not involved in the membership side or the marketing side. I know that they're really trying to think about, how do we bring people back? How do we make them feel safe? I know, did anybody, I think I posted this a couple times ago. I think, is it Anytime Fitness or 24? They have a really good video. I would highly suggest watching that video about saying what they're doing, saying how they're protecting people. It's on YouTube, and it's a great video. And I know that our marketing team is looking to do something similar. And I know that we're I think I've heard Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe putting that up on our TVs and things like that.
Yeah, that's our plan, is to try to get as much information in front of the people using our facilities once we reopen, to help them feel more comfortable about, what steps are being taken to help safeguard everyone's health and not create a hotspot. So we're gonna, I think once that video is created and we roll out with it, it's not only gonna go out on our social media platforms, but it will be running. We have TVs mounted inside our weight rooms and throughout common areas in our facilities, and so that will be running on those as well.
I think one of the Colorado branches put out a video as well. I can't remember offhand which one, but and I think we've talked about that at OSU too, is creating a video of like what life is like now in the facility, how you use it, how you navigate it. Directional signage, all of that. So it's a good point of like, how are we going to communicate that to staff and students and then the patrons too, Mark. So thanks for bringing that up.
And I know this kind of goes against what you were saying, but there has been conversation about having a UTPD presence the first couple of weeks to just kind of make sure everything goes smoothly. And I know that might not create a great atmosphere, but it also might quell any disruptions that we may have. So that has also been part of our conversations.
The Colorado school, it's Steve Burey from Fusion. The Colorado school that has the video is Colorado Mesa, and they put that out with their Fusion Go app so that when the students log in, it's one of the first things they see. So they have an expectation set when they come into the facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Chad, do you see Catherine's question from Loyola?
Yes. Catherine's asking, Loyola is asking the question of, is it legally allowable and medically advisable on everything? So for example, someone talked about vendors. Should we be bringing vendors onto campus in the facility? And would it apply as, is it legally allowable and medically advisable? Has that conversation come up at other universities? Obviously some projects are going to be put on hold, but just in general, if you're bringing a vendor on campus, what's that looking like at your university? And that may be tough because that may not be addressed until we're actually open for some facilities and may, I guess, get lower on the totem pole. I know that we do currently have vendors in our facility right now for different projects. So less of an issue just because we don't have patrons of the facility yet.
Chad, can we back up to the previous topic a moment?
Absolutely.
So some of y'all were expressing concerns about trying to make your facility, making our facilities welcome to folks coming in. I at least wanted to be able to share Wake Forest University. We're currently, our campus life division is surveying our students about what are they thinking in terms of 6 feet distancing, wearing masks, other health precautions to get their perspective on it. And from that, then creating a social norming marketing campaign to try to be able to use that the same way that we have, regarding our students end up having perceptions that their peers are drinking much more than they are. On this one, to say, we anticipate that they probably are more interested in maintaining 6 foot distancing and wearing masks and keeping members of the campus population safe. But if they all of a sudden are walking onto campus and seeing that that's not the behavior that folks are exhibiting, thinking that they are then in the minority in that belief. So basically launching a marketing campaign to say, nope, this is what most of you have responded to in the survey and said your preference is that we are looking out for one another.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that comment.
This is Deb from Rose-Hulman. We do have a lot of vendors on our campus currently because we are getting a new turf field and there's different projects going on in our rec facility, but we are allowing vendors on campus, but it is a campus-wide requirement that regardless if you work on campus or you're outside guests, you are required to wear a mask no matter where you are on campus.
Sorry about that. So I think another area, sorry if I missed something, the next topic I think that actually a lot of us will be looking at is how are you repurposing areas? And then how are you managing that also with your programming side that now may be taken offline or have limited hours for programming or use of a space. I can speak for us. We do have a lot of space. It's one of the nice things we have at Ohio State. So we will be repurposing a lot of our gym space. We are looking at opening up one of our smaller satellites first, and the turf fields will probably be taken offline for use for different machine equipment, functional type of exercising as well. And is there anything that your current current department's looking at and how you will repurpose areas and how you will manage that along with programming.
Yeah, Chad, we're looking at right now with our gym, we were going to repurpose it for, you know, singles, pickleball, and badminton, but we have been talking about if we want to move equipment in there. But the concern is the gym floor. So I was wondering if anyone has recommendation of a type of mat to purchase so where we could put that equipment in there. We don't currently have any in stock here with us, but we are looking at that in potentially phase 2 or 3, depending on how long this goes. So I'm curious if anyone has any recommendations on type of mat to use.
We when we were in the expansion phase, we put down, oh, I can't think of the name of it, like masonite, or someone will know what I'm talking about, on our grade 1 flooring, and then we covered it with Signature Systems carpet tiles. And so that protected our floor from treadmills and whatever we put on it. We're thinking about doing that again as we pull some of the treadmills out to create the physical distancing that we're going to need. Yeah, I can't think of the name of that stuff, but that was really protective flooring for us in our racquetball courts.
Do you remember if it was expensive?
I will be honest, I don't know how much it costs, but I believe our facilities crew took care of it. It could have been our construction crew. But again, it was just a racquetball court, so it wasn't too much. It couldn't have been too much.
Robert, that's what we're looking at too, is plywood panels underneath the equipment if we have to move it.
So at Texas, we just built out a weight room on, I helped to oversee one of the indoor satellites, and on the 3rd court, we built a, I'm having a weight room for our football team. And so we had to protect the floor. I mean, we're talking like 300, 400 pounds dropping onto the floor. So we had to protect that floor. So if I'm going to drop my email address in here, and because I don't know the exact flooring off the top of my head, but if you email me, I will look that up and send it to you.
Mark, that's a good idea of using old yoga mats to help protect the floor for deadlifts. Stream mats are being talked about. How about outdoor space? Has that been discussed for anyone as far as what that would potentially be repurposed for, or even sharing space with other departments in the university, and how that would be managed? Will you manage the cleaning? Would the other department manage the cleaning? I know we share some space with athletics. I would imagine there's other universities that do that as well. All right, well, we will move on to our next topic then. Looking kind of going on the same lines of repurposing areas. What about facility modifications, specifically sneeze guards, touchless everything from potentially entry and exit of a facility? How are you setting up equipment on your courts? And then a big topic is air handling systems and potentially the cost that's involved with those. Has that come up with any of your departments? I know we have Fusion up for entry into the facility, but we do not technically have access or exits to determine when someone leaves, which creates an issue when we're trying to do accurate head counts on our locations. Connect to is one option that we're hoping to use to help with that. what modifications outside of the norm that does anyone want to touch on for their university?
We can talk a little bit about, between Ross and I, we can talk a little bit about what we're doing at Texas. I know that Ross, were you purchasing the plexiglass for the sneeze guards?
Yeah, we've actually obtained all of the acrylic plexiglass that we're going to need. We are planning on doing temporary sneeze guards at all of our front-facing interaction areas. So where our participants scan their IDs to gain access, we will put freestanding sets there. Where our main front desk is at Gregory Gym, we're going to do a surface-mounted, a little bit more permanent, but surface-mounted into drywall, so easily to patch paint and to repair when we return to not needing them. In our main weight room, we're going to do some freestanding sets. We're not doing plexiglass in between machines like I've seen in some private health clubs. I know there's a club in New York that's doing plexiglass in between each machine, which we thought would be a cleaning nightmare and extremely tough to keep clean. So instead, we're closing down every other machine in our main weight room with giant golf cart covers and motorcycle covers. It's actually one of the purchases that my teammate was flagged for was having motorcycle covers shipped to his house from Amazon. And our accounting department had some questions to ask about that. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we're doing. It's just some temporary sneeze guards throughout our facilities and closing down machines, not necessarily doing like moving equipment.
Our printing department actually on campus has offered to create a lot of different plexiglass type. We need those or sneeze guards for. So I don't know if that's something other universities might provide. I know it was unique that the printing department would actually have that, probably the laser printers. So we talked about, so Stephanie brought up a good point of just entry access, if you're one in, one out, stairwells as well, as far as how does that manage, and trying to also prevent claustrophobia of access. Reading through some of these other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us, we're single point access. So one door in, one door out, one person on the elevator. But someone brought up a thing in our chat for our church town hall meeting. Will the restrooms be policed for physical distancing? And I think stairwells are that same thing. Like, I mean, at some point, unless you're walking by someone and licking them, I think you can move past someone and we're okay. Like that's what happens at the grocery store. So I don't think we're going to make any kind of like, I mean, I tell people up on the right, down on the right, just for appropriate social appropriateness, walking up the stairs. But I mean, I think there's only so much we can do before there's that personal responsibility piece.
Yes, I was gonna hit on that too, Stephanie. And that goes into a lot of the cleaning too, like in between users, and we have to have them help us make this happen, or we would have 50 people staffed an hour to just make sure all of those things happen. So I agree with you. I don't think we can police everything, and I don't think we can clean everything all the time, and there has to be some social responsibility as well. That's great that they're putting that in your messaging. That's awesome.
If I could chime in, this is Jobey Lichtblau from North Dakota State. We have been open since May 18th. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we've experienced. I've listened to some of the questions. We have plexiglass at our customer service desk as well as our rec desk. We had to change some, the way we did some things. Individuals have to self-scan. Fortunately, we have a credit card machine that we can hand to the individual. What I have been most pleased about is people have been very understanding. People have been very polite. And so in the past, we've always had policies that individuals have had to follow. And they are very, very understanding of the policies that we have now, the enhanced policies that we have. And so We have not had any issues since we opened with anybody not following policy. I also agree that there's only so much that you can do. We have had individuals come in who say, you know what, we all live together, so why are you asking us to social distance? And so I don't feel that that is our job to try and police households and ask for IDs to see if they live in the same household. And so individuals have a lot of responsibility in that regard where they're responsible for that. Before we opened, we talked about a lot of the things that you have talked about. Obviously, we're a little bit smaller. Summer's a little bit quieter, so it was a perfect time to reopen. We're averaging about 50% of what we would have had last summer, which is about 200 a day. It's mainly students. Most of our associate members or faculty and staff are not coming back at this time. That's because most people at the university are still working from home. But the individuals who are coming here are individuals who feel comfortable. And I would say there are students and members who come here that feel comfortable, no questions asked, enter our facility. The individuals who are going to question are the individuals who are going to call the membership line and ask questions about what you have done differently. We have also invited individuals to come walk around to see what we have done so that they can feel more comfortable. And a lot of them have done that as well.
Thank you. It's really great information, Jobey. We appreciate that. We actually
it gives me hope.
Yeah. We already talked a little bit about this, but just participants in the facility and reserving times, like how we plan to use that. We plan on closing down the facility in order to do that, to clean and allow members back in. I think for initially, we're looking at using Fusion and setting up each of our spaces for a programming area, and we can reserve space that way. I think that when we open our larger facilities, though, that's not going to work. Someone, I think it was UT Austin, put in, they're using, is it picktime.com? Is that correct?
Hey, Ross.
Ross, I think that might have been you.
Yeah, it is. So we're fortunate enough to have an IT team in-house that's kind of working on it. We're using our existing racquetball court reservation system and modifying that. However, they've got a lot of stuff getting thrown at them right now. And so we didn't want to pile on to what they've got. So one of our teammates created through PickTime a basic version of what we're looking to do that would allow us to set up reservation times for workouts.
Is that a free service?
I don't know. I didn't create it. But I would say that if he did, I think it's probably not something he would have spent money on.
Hey, Chad, do you see Jason's questions about bottle filler versus water fountain?
Yep. So Jason, Darby had a question. Has anyone found a clever way to shut down or cover your water fountains that's visually appealing, i.e. not covering it with a trash bag? We can't unplug them because we want to still allow the automatic bottle filler to work. It's come up for us. I don't think we've figured out a way to actually create a clever way to cover them up.
Hey, this is Rahul from Minnesota. So we are planning to block the area where you press for water. So we're going to put like a small, like a thin plywood on top of it so people can't press for water. And we're just going to allow water fountain, like the bottle filler, to work.
Yeah, and it could have very well been user error on my part. We attempted to go in and shut down that, but I wound up shutting down the water pressure to the bottle filler as well. So, like I said, 100% claiming user error on that, but we're trying to find a way to do that because our university president would not be keen on walking in and simply seeing a garbage bag over the water fountains or something like that. He's very, very focused on aesthetics, so we're just trying to come up with some clever ways.
Stephanie Nielsen said you can contact the vendor or user handbook to help address this, and that their facilities and operations were able to shut off the fountains but still keep the bottle filler option open for use. So thank you for that. Or you can also use a golf cover. Thanks to Leslie. So back to reserving time. I think Jillian, you said that you guys are not planning on actually using any type of reservation system for space. I think we're looking at that for our pool, and that'll probably be ongoing. Pool space we'll have something set up through Fusion for that they can go through Rec Register.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of people starting to utilize IM leagues both for their pool registration and fitness classes, in addition with obviously intramurals. Xavier University hasn't really had those conversations just yet. Mainly our conversations have talked about doing a midday close of certain areas within the facilities so we can do deep cleans both throughout the day and then at closing as well.
And IM Leagues is obviously a free service, so that I know that can help a lot of departments, or they're already currently using it as well too. Anyone else as far as space reservation? Adam, you had a question. I think we are looking at roughly an hour and 15 to slash an hour and a half, hopefully allowing 15 to 20 minutes of cleaning after the person's finished, and then clearing out the facility within 90 minutes. So that's roughly a 90-minute block. And that's just for our phase one. I think I don't know that we'll be able to have that for phase two. We're gonna have more facilities online.
For phase one, we're going to do alternating days. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can come in and do a 50-minute workout. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 75-minute workout. And then there's going to be space in between to get everybody out for a sec, maybe clean up those high touch points. And then Saturdays and Sundays, Saturdays is 50, Sundays is 75. So we're mixing it up so that there's different time frames for everyone.
Erin, how are you guys gonna spread that news? Because I think students are so, used to apps and they're used to that sort of stuff. But when it comes to their workouts, they're not all, your real heavy users are more scheduled, but you have those folks that just drop in because they had a few extra minutes or a class got out early. So how are you going to deal with those students that come in and are like, this is the only time I have to do it today, and I didn't make a reservation because I didn't know class was going to get out early? And those are the things I worry about.
This is for phase one. We don't know if this will still happen in phase two. And phase one is going to be like if we open this summer, it'll be during the summer. And then phase two is for when students come back on campus. So I'm just talking about phase one right now. And all of our summer classes are online. So it's a good way to kind of start this process and get people in the habits. But again, I don't know what phase two is going to look like yet. We're just in phase one still.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question on that. And I know a lot of us have talked about the minutes to clean. Is this having gone through and cleaned it and it takes 75 minutes? Because that's one of our first things we want to do is like 5 people go to town and see, because I'm concerned that we're going to set a time frame and set this plan and then find out, it takes us 2.5 hours to disinfect the whole building. The second thing is more a statement than a question, but I just feel like I have to say it out loud. I'm kind of concerned. I know we're phasing things in, but I'm really concerned aware that this sneeze guards might be the new normal. So what I hope is a temporary thing. I'm just aware that it might become the thing and we will forever have disgusting plexiglass in front of us. I don't know. It makes me sad, but I know that might just be the new thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're everywhere right now, aren't they? They're at grocery stores. They're they're everywhere. So I can, yes.
CJ, you said you guys are using IM leagues at Texas A&M. If could you shoot the link to your homepage for that, just so we can maybe see it in the chat box there. So the other thing along with this is how do you enforce those times? I think this goes back to I think Joe's point too. Like how are we talking about this with our patrons, and what's that relationship with them now? Are we the police people now, and we're making sure that you're only in there for 90 minutes? Who's doing that? Is it the students? Is it our professional staff that are called in to help? Has that been discussed with your groups of enforcement of policies and procedures? Also, thanks CJ for that.
Hey Thomas, how often are you doing the airport style? Are you doing it every 15, every 20? Are you just doing like, all right, it's time to leave? Or are you doing like remember cleaning stuff?
So our health clinic on campus actually recorded the material for us. It's going to be sent out every 15 minutes, and it's basically 4 different recordings that we're going to play once an hour. And then so the first one is just kind of a reminder to clean equipment and what our resources are on campus. And then as you get closer towards the end of the session, it is more politely forceful that you need to leave. And then our staff on the floor, after hearing the announcements, have a checklist to kind of go and sweep through spaces. So I guess it's closer to 4 or 5 times an hour. So hopefully not too annoying.
Ross, I like your idea for announcements.
We're going to actually record him singing that.
I think our hope is, Ross, that that wouldn't be something that we continue past phase 1, as far as kicking people out after 90 minutes, but that is a good point of how do you keep them from being desensitized, and if they are using headphones. I know people at the airport pretty much tone out most things. So we have about 2 more minutes left. There's a couple more questions that came up. Jillian, since I called you out earlier, I'll go ahead and submit your question here. Has anyone heard from staff that they do not feel comfortable returning to work and or cleaning? And I guess how would you handle that? I know we sent out a survey to all our staff, just seeing what they would want to do and where their comfort level was. And we will obviously have some phasing in of who's using working what shifts. Has anyone else had that discussion yet?
This is Jobey again. We were also concerned about that. We had more staff want to go back to work because they needed money. And so we've actually had to turn a number of staff members away because we don't have enough positions for them. But I was very surprised at the number who wanted to be here, who are positive to be here. And so I think you'll also be surprised at that number as well. Again, I want to reiterate too, I was worried about so many of the things that you all were. People have been so respectful. It's been a good process. So I can't stress enough, even the sneeze guards, we're getting used to them. And they're not that bad, but people have been so polite. They are just happy to be back. They will do whatever they can to be back, has been our experience so far.
So Erin asked do we want to have another one of these? We didn't get to the beast that is kind of programming. So that could be probably its own topic for an entire hour discussion. Would another 2 weeks, or is that too late? Further out, do you want to be 3 weeks, 2 weeks? Raise your hand for the 10 people that are on video. Awesome. Erin, Sarah, do you have anything else?
No, I would say 2 weeks is definitely a good one to go with, because just with a week, I know we're still going to be in the middle of our phase. And hopefully it sounds like some of you guys are ahead of us. And so I think two weeks would be a good gap. But I would also encourage you guys, we did create a way for y'all to ask questions and let us know of agenda items. I don't know if we have that link anymore, Erin. But if you have things that you're coming across within those next 2 weeks that, oh, this might be something everyone wants to know, shoot one of us an email and we'll add it to the agenda and that topic. Because I know things happen within that 2 weeks, and I don't know about y'all, but every day's a blur at this point. But that way we can start adding to that agenda to kind of keep this ball rolling.
But it sounds like programming would be a good lead off for the next one. Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.